I think we all have a little bit of worrywart in us. And what I mean by that is I think all of us at some point in our life or another, we end up worrying about something, usually worrying about something that we can't really change. But I'm a psychology nerd, and I wanted to dive into why we worry about things. But I also want to come up with some solutions, how we can get over the worrying. You see, if I can be honest with you, I'm someone that's battled anxiety a lot with my life. It's been ever since I was a little kid. And it's something that I've had to maintain some serious control over. And actually embracing that anxiety isn't always a bad thing if you can channel it right. But I want to submit to you something interesting. When you actually start looking at anxiety and worry this way, it might start being a little bit more clear to you on how you can get around it. You see, when we worry about something, particularly something that's not likely really going to happen, like let's say you're worrying about losing your job day in and day out, even though it's a job you've been in for 5 or 6 years. The likelihood of you actually losing that job is pretty slim, but you still worry about it. So then every single day that you worry, and every single day that you wake up and you still have your job, you've just positively reinforced your worry. So the dopamine response and that standard loop in our brain is now telling us that that's reinforced. And that because of our worry, even if it's subconscious, that is why we aren't losing our job. Now that's just one example. This happens on a micro level too. If you're constantly worried about something and that never comes to fruition or never really happens, then you're constantly telling yourself that that's okay and that's the way that it should be, and it's all as a result of your worry. So that's the big underlying picture of why worrying might actually give us some gratification or some fulfillment. But let's talk about 3 specific reasons why we might worry. Number 1 is going to be avoiding a surprise. None of us like being blindsided by something. None of us like being absolutely hit randomly with some bad news. So subconsciously, we think that if we're constantly worrying about it, we're going to prevent that from happening. We're not going to be blindsided. We're protecting ourselves. If you're worrying about something, even if it only happens 1 out of 10 times, when it does happen, you can sit there and be relieved that you were worrying about it. So thankfully, you weren't as impacted by it. But at the end of the day, it still happened or it didn't happen. The number 2 reason is one that I hear a lot. And I hear it from people that come to me as clients, and they're talking to me about how they're always worried about other people. And that's just that. You're worrying and disguising it as caring for other people. And although that might be good-hearted, it might be good-natured, you might really be worried about someone because you care about them. In realistic terms, that worry, caring about someone else, is actually more detrimental in the grand scheme of things. What I mean by that is, if you focused more on worrying about yourself and your self-preservation and feeling better, then you'd truly be able to care for that person a little bit better. And at the end of the day, would be a better end result. Now, number 3 is the big one. And this is the one that I am personally super guilty of and still to this day have a hard time overcoming. And that's the fact that worrying can help us problem solve. You see, if your mind is going a million miles an hour all the time, you're thinking about work, you're thinking about family, you're thinking about fitness, whatever the case may be, the fact that you're worrying is allowing you to problem solve at that point in time. You see, we're worrying about something so we can find a solution or solve a problem. But in reality, is that truly helping you? If your brain is so diversified across all these different continuums, you're worrying about this, you're worrying about that, you're worrying about what you need to do at the office, you're worrying about feeding the dog, you're worrying about what you need to get at the store because you're trying to solve a problem, imagine how much more effective you could be if you actually focused on the problem and truly solved it versus just worrying about it to give yourself a little bit of peace of mind that you're worrying about it. So now that I've given you 3 reasons why we worry, let's talk about 3 simple solutions. And these are things that I've done personally, things that I've experimented with my own anxiety. First one is simple. It's connecting your brain and your body. That sounds super simple, but it is a little bit more complex than just that. You see, we actually have hormones in our heart. And those hormones in our heart can actually allow the heart to sync with the brain. And as cheesy as this sounds, a lot of times when we are in moments of deep compassion, when we're actually caring or giving, a lot of times those hormones allow us to be in sync with the brain. You see, when you look at an actual EKG, when you look at your heart rhythm and you look at your brain rhythm, when those wavelengths come in sync, that's a lot of times when we are our most calm and we also end up doing our best critical thinking at that point in time. Hormones are a pretty good indicator of where our bodies are at in a given point of time. So I have a little trick. If you simply deep breathe and you start focusing on your heartbeat a little bit more and focusing on syncing your heartbeat with your breath, whatever scale that might be, 2 beats per breath, 3 beats per breath, even 1 beat per breath, a lot of times you can find that you can start to get that in sync. You see, what's going to happen is if your body starts to relax, that simple loop between your body and your brain is going to perpetuate and allow you to get into that cycle where you're going to start to feel better. Now, on the contrary, if you're stressed out and your body tenses up, well, that tension is going to sink back with your brain, and your brain, in a protective mechanism, is going to cause more anxiety and cause you to tense up more. So it can either be a vicious circle or it can be a calming circle, and you have the choice to break that pattern whichever way you need to. And a lot of times it only takes 30 seconds, maybe even 60 seconds at the most. The second one is to embrace uncertainty. Now, I know that sounds kind of cheesy and it sounds like a cop-out because it sounds super simple. Well, just embrace whatever's going to happen. But the truth is, you're embracing it either way. Whether you're embracing it through shock and awe, or whether you're embracing it in the present and not worrying about it in the future. You see, it all comes down to simply accepting the fact that you can't change things that are going to happen. And instead of just tolerating the fact that things are going to change and tolerating the fact that some things are out of your control, you actually need to sit there and embrace it. Because honestly, that's one of the beautiful things of life, is the fact that we don't know what is around the corner. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's mediocre. But if you could stop and live in the moment for 1 second and embrace that, it changes your entire perspective on worrying. And you owe it to yourself. It's really a matter of self-preservation and survival to really embrace the present and embrace that change. The last one is something that's a little bit more tangible. And that's simply focusing. Finding something that you can focus and get in that flow state in. Because if you are hyper-focused on something, you can't be worrying about other things in your life. You can't be worrying about the future. You see, worrying by definition is literally about the future. So if you're trying to worry about something that's in the future that you can't change, well, then obviously you can't be focused and in the moment. If you've ever noticed that when you're driving in some kind of intense driving scenario where you're really having to change lanes a lot really quickly, well, a lot of times your brain isn't all over the place. Or let's say, for example, you're doing some kind of extreme sport. You know, if you were skiing down a slope and you were having to go through rocks and you were having to go through trees and you were having to avoid people, you're not thinking about what you have to do tomorrow. You're not thinking about work the next week. You're thinking about that very moment in time. So I'm not saying that you go out and do something extreme, but you go out and do something that is risky enough that allows you to focus on the present. Heck, add an element of danger to it. You know, that's exactly why adventure sports and exactly why extreme athletes do what they do. They get hooked on that flow state. They get hooked on that focus. Why? Because it draws them out of that worry. A lot of times these people are hyper intelligent people, even if they don't look like it. Sometimes surf junkies, ski bums, sometimes they're the smartest people you'll ever meet. And their brains are so active that they actually have to escape it by doing focusing activities. So you can do that on a smaller scale. Maybe it's chess, maybe it's a crossword puzzle, maybe it's going out for a run that's pushing yourself hard enough so you can only focus on the fact that you're laboriously breathing. But do something that gets you in the present and allows you to ground yourself to earth so you stop worrying about what could or couldn't happen in the future. Stop rewarding yourself for the negative. Stop positively reinforcing something that is good. You wouldn't pat yourself on the back if you grabbed the donut, so don't pat yourself on the back when you're worrying. As always, keep it locked in here in my videos, and if you'd like these personal development type of videos, let me know in the comment section below and let me know what ideas you might have in the world of psychology. As always, keep it locked in here in my videos. See you in the next one.